It is 6:16. Call the Finance Committee to order. The first business is just meeting minutes. We'll get that out of the way. They are from March 21st, 2024. Does anyone have any questions, comments, or anything, or want to make a motion on the meeting minutes from March 21st, 2024?
I'll make a motion that we accept the minutes as documented.
Second.
Any other discussion? The link on that meeting minutes is the corrected presentation, right, that she sent? Not the initial one. She sent a corrected one, right? I don't know if we ever got the original presentation.
No, we only got
the corrected one. Okay, just want to make sure. Okay,
Yeah, sorry, I was
thanks.
confused.
No, that's fine. Okay, any other comments, corrections, conversation? All those in favor of accepting the minutes for March 21st, 2024?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay,
I abstain.
okay. And that was the only thing on the agenda other than the Community Preservation Act. I will let you take it over, whoever wants to. Are you talking about this?
So, thank you for the invitation of coming. It's a great privilege and honor to be here to sit before you folks tonight. So, Randy Jordan, part of the Ag Commission, and Glenn Koppler, Chairman of the Ag Commission here. We feel, a month or so ago, we had a meeting we invited all that were able to come, and Ted was able to be there, as well as other committees were there, and to do it all. Our goal is to get out to committees and make them aware of things, hopefully get some feedback, and ultimately, at the end of the day, we're looking for, hopefully, support from most, if not all, the committees in the town going forward to this, to go as a united front to the annual town meeting on May 11th for this forward. So CPA is Community Preservation Act that has been in place for 20 years, give or take, for the towns from the state to be it. There is a CPA committee from the state of Massachusetts that they have 2 full-time employees that assist towns in doing this process going forward, that Lear and us have had some communication back and forth. There is some dynamic information on the website that they have offered some things to it. There are some choices that we have to make as a community as we want to go forward and do this. The town of Hubbardston is the closest community that we all drive through and see the benefits, or there's an awful lot of activity going on in the town of Hubbardston. A lot of them has been Community Preservation Act money that's being spent up there in the town. In turn, we, the Ag Commission, has felt there has been opportunities in this town in years past that there has been some open space that has come available to the town through 61A process that the majority of the people in town would like to see to save it for open space and potential future use. There is some difference of opinion on that subject for sure, but yet it all comes down to lack of funds to be able to do it and get it easily. And there's a time frame with 61A to do it. I think if we had money in place from CPA, that could be used in different forms and eases of it. I've had several people talk to us in the recent history of CPA has done, AKA the town of Hubbardston or Whirlwind. Other people have come forward and said, hey, our tax bill has actually gone down to our individual homes over this time once CPA was put in place. CPA can be used for different sources of money coming in from each of it. The money that comes in from CPA, that I'll speak about in a minute, has to be spent on historical, affordable housing, and open space and recreation. 5%, and those are all 10% of the total money that can be spent on that. 5% of it can be spent for administration costs to do it, and the remaining of the 65% could be spent in any one of those categories doing it. I took an evaluation of different communities that have done this: Hubbardston, Templeton, Phillipston, West Boylston. Towns that we all can see and touch and feel. There's 192 or 196 communities in the state of Massachusetts that have done this for a number of years. The majority of those communities that I just rattled off to you, most of them are 2008, 2009, so they've had some history and whereabouts under it. The process with CPA is it's a surcharge to your taxes of any percentages from a quarter up to 3%. If you choose to go with a full 3%, you have a more likely chance to receive a 100% match from the state in regards to your funds coming in. Now, that has the ability to fluctuate, and we all know how the state works in regards to they promise you something, give you something different. Two of those four communities I just listed off are a 100% match because they are at 3%. The majority of the projects the majority of those years that the money has been funded to those communities, out of one community had 2 years that they weren't 100%. For the lack of better terms, those two communities that have 3% have received 100% of matching funds. Don't hold me to this, but Phillipston, smaller community, less parcels, less business, less everything going on in there, had received somewhere in that neighborhood of $2.2 million have come in from the townspeople for it at their 3% match. I believe they had $100,000 exemption that I'll speak about in a minute of the exemption that goes on there. In turn, the state has matched that $2.2 million of funds coming in. I have information here that we can speak about a little bit, but of the money that can be used in those communities could be anything from improving the soccer field, doing a recreational playground, doing the slate roof up in Hubbardston Center, of putting a slate roof on. Things have been funded by that. Grange halls have been fixed. So in turn, you're gonna ask of how, what, and where that money gets spent, right? In turn, that money is spent through a CPA committee that is appointed by the select, men's, board, thank you, that's the word I was looking for. The select board appoints the committee, and that has to be set up in bylaws to determine how it's done, but it's different committees that are putting on there. There's probably be some seats on there at large. The money that is requested for the community in different, typically town buildings, but it can be the Rufus Putnam home down here across from Ralph Anderson's house is a historical building that
Wood studio.
but I'm saying a non-town buildings could be also looked at it, but it has to go before the committee to be presented, and then the committee makes a recommendation. The selectmen will have to push it on to the warrant article, and then the townspeople ultimately have the final say whether they do a certain project or not. AKA, some of these communities have spent money in Templeton doing Grange Hall renovation, a non-affiliated town building, doing things like that, right? There's literally hundreds in those four communities since 2008 that they have spent money on. So I think one advantage or one angle that you folks can look at, being the finance of the town, is we're always challenged and struggle for my years of being involved in the town, of having enough money to do what we want on capital projects and or other projects, similar to our 2.5 override here just recently. The majority of this money from CPA only can be used for capital projects of bigger expenses. It can't be put toward budgets and things like that, but yet it could help with some of these additional larger things to be going on. That some people at the group meeting that we had, what do you think you're gonna spend the first cluster of money on? And I really don't have a good answer. I know what things that we've missed, in my opinion, would be things that are missed opportunities that we could have had if we had money, AKA the Wood Studio roof, right? That's a historical building that we could have used some funds for that on. Purchasing some land here on Main Street right down here a number of years ago, the Davis property, that whether they chose to save it or not, they could have used some money for that. Those are just a couple of examples that could have been used on. In turn, people have made the comment to me in other communities that their taxes have physically gone down because we're able to do some of these additional larger projects to do it going forward. Some things that we have to determine as a community, and the Ag Commission, with the suggestion and the feedback from the different communities that we physically have, we'll get the submissions. So we gotta decide on what level of money that we wanna propose to this, anywhere from 0.5% to 3%. We, the Ag Commission, is certainly leaning toward the direction of doing 3%. The reason that we're doing 3% is because we could have that potential 100% match from the state, as well as, so it doubles our money, So that's why I refer to this program as a 401K. You as the employee and the employer is matching it to double your money, potentially, right? And then, it also gives us an opportunity to receive more grants in this community, so when they fill out grants, Austin has told us this directly, that one of the questions on grants that come up is, geez, are you part of the CPA community? Geez, we check no now. It doesn't necessarily affect us, but it doesn't give us any extra brownie points to go a little bit farther ahead. So we're trying to prove that we have an extra brownie point to check off to help in additional grants coming forth to this town. We also have to talk about exemptions, right? An exemption, now that we've learned a little bit more, you can have two choices. You can have a zero exemption or a $100,000 exemption. We propose doing a $100,000 exemption right now as a whole going forward, because we want to give everybody that, a little bit of a break. Our average home evaluation in the town of Rutland right now is $427 to the best of my knowledge. So in turn, if your home is an average home at $427, it reduces the value of your home to $327. And then if we do 3%, it's 3% of $327 on there to do that. In turn, we're trying to keep the number for each average home in town at an affordable number. There's different opinion of what affordable is and not. At 3% on your average home of the $427, which would be $100,000 off, which would be $327, it would work out to $147 per year, not per quarter, per year. Westminster has educated us a little bit because they tried this a couple years ago and they were very close, but they were unsuccessful in getting it. They had their number a little bit lower, but they used the word quarters, right? And then people had to do the math in their head and they just rammed it. We're trying to keep it so, hey, it's gonna cost your house $147 to do that. In our opinions, just the Ag Commission's opinion, $147 really isn't that much now. That's a family of four going out for a dinner and one drink. You know, you can't do much. So if somebody can't give up one meal a year to help out the community in CPA, it's we got bigger fish to fry. In turn, we have some challenges or people that are on fixed incomes that could be challenged with this number. Completely understand that. There are exemptions for low income. There are a threshold that's set by the state that changes every year, but you have to go in and ask if you're exempt, if you qualify in the numbers. The number is $85,000 for, maybe that's a senior with a two-person home. So there's different exemptions that you can do. You can do low income, you can do moderate to low income for seniors, and there's thresholds there, so there are exemptions of those that are challenged financially to physically do that. So we're looking into that. I know there was some question about difference between commercial and residential that I didn't know a lot about, that we learned a little bit about this week. In our opinions right now going forward is we'd like it to be a level playing field for everybody. Commercial and residential will be all the same. We only currently have one tax base here in the town of Rutland right now. Why segregate it? Some communities do it a little differently in different exemptions, and some do, some don't. We want the town of Rutland to be all equal. The businesses, commercial, residential, all to be equally the same, so there's no exemptions there. I know there was some concern with 61A, but it's on property evaluations, right? So we're not gonna reinvent the wheel in regards to try to go out and take the 61A property and reevaluate it as regular property without 61A. That just, that doesn't necessarily work. It's whatever, whether my hayfield is valued at whatever it is now, we don't wanna, I'm still gonna pay on that if it falls within that criteria of it. So my taxes will go up relatively to my tax bill in regards to that. So again, fair and equitable for everybody going forward. So that's the general overview of things going forward there. I think it's a missed opportunity that we've had in years. I don't remember, and I haven't heard why it didn't pass 20 years ago. There are different communities that would choose to do less to get it in. Our philosophy is if we're gonna fight for this, and Lear has spoke to several communities that have recently done this in the last 4 or 5 years, and they've all got in at lower than 3%. And their biggest thing was, yes, they had to fight to get it in, and they tried to keep the number for each average home to physically be lower to do it, right? In turn, the the philosophy is, or those philosophies at those communities are, is I wish we had gone for the 3% for the matching fund to double down from the town to do forward. They all regret doing that. You have the ability, and these are the details down in the weeds that we'd like to know the answers to, but we don't want to confuse the townspeople when we go before our public forums or the annual town meeting to speak about this, is, I don't know where I was going with this, it's pretty bad here. But in turn, they all wanted to switch, you have the ability to, if you get it voted in and need to change it for some reason, you can wait 5 years and you have the ability to change it, right? You can take it out if the system doesn't work. We can't afford the $147 if that's what we choose to vote in. We can eliminate the CPA completely from the community. No one has done it in the history of CPA being around. But if you want to change from 1% to 2% or 3%, you have the ability to do that, and there's a manner to do that. Not necessarily clear of the specifics, but there may be a time frame to do it. You can change the exemptions if you choose to. Originally, we thought we could exempt things as high as whatever we wanted to do. So we thought of putting the exemption higher, but the state doesn't allow that. There are only two exemptions, 0 or 100,000. So we propose doing the highest to help keep it a little bit more affordable for the folks. We're not necessarily looking to get all the money out of the people all in one time to physically do it, but we're looking for the 3% to be able to have the state to match the funds doing it going forward. So I think that's the general overview of doing is what we're doing. I'm certainly able to answer questions, and there's probably some things that I've missed that I'd like to say, but that's the general gist of what we're trying to do. Ultimately, we're looking for the support of the committees to, think about it, develop some questions, do it back, but ultimately, before the annual town meeting, I'd love to have a motion of support from the committees to go forward to do it, so we can go as a united front doing it forwards. I genuinely think it's very, very powerful from the finance and the selectmen to do it, but if we had, other committees to follow along with us to do it, it just shows the town people that we all believe in it. I know there may be some questions here, or there's some questions that are floating around the community is, it was just last year that we voted a 2.5 override in. And, people said that this should survive us for a number of years. There are concerns that money may have run short already or soon and doing that, so that some people are saying, how can we trust the town, and saying, hey, if you put this in, it's gonna save us. Well, I'm not certain that I can say that, but yet I think it has a different angle of it to potentially, it takes some of the say away from the selectmen, or even you folks, the finance, to physically do it, but it gives the townspeople a little bit more say themselves on what they do in the future going forward. Those are some of the questions that have come forward. There's been a lot of positive feed about it. Seth Knight lives in Hubbardston, has had some sidebar conversations with us. He says the town of Hubbardston would not, everything that you've seen in the community in the center of Hubbardston, of whether it's the sidewalks or the playgrounds or the slate roof that's going up there, in just the last few years, none of that would have been able to happen if it wasn't for CPA money there going forward. We don't have a housing authority here right now, but we could do studies or researches or to help that out and get more affordable housing in for the town. We're on the lower spectrum of affordable housing in the town of Rutland right now going forward doing it, right? We cry about recreation. There isn't enough fields for the kids to do it. We can do studies, or we could look into improving some of the fields that we currently have, or build new fields for the kids. There is endless opportunities of what we could do to do it. We all need some renovations or to the town hall. I'm not certain how to figure that in, but I think there are clever people, part of our team, that can figure out, hey, maybe it's better to do this versus that to get us more office space or things to help the town hall of doing things like that.
Okay, so I'm gonna bring up the bad topic of conversation, which is, we had, I don't know how many boards, it was at least 5 boards that all wanted that 16 acres. And the Board of Selectmen did not move it forward. How are you going to, my concern would be, we put this money aside and the Board of Selectmen says, yeah, I'm not interested, and doesn't place the warrant.
valid question, Karen, and I think that's a valid concern. I think that's really what lit the fire under the Ag Commission, because we had 5 boards that suggested something positive to do it. In the board's eyes, it was a good investment, right?
As well as a lot of taxpayers that showed up that night.
That is correct. Now, there are reasons that I have been told about why they didn't choose to do it, and it was, at the end of the day, we probably should spend that money in other directions of the needs, whether it's the community center, whether it's the senior center that we don't have, whether it's the town hall that needs renovations, or, there's 100 things that we could spend money on it, which I completely understand, right? I didn't at that time, I do now, right, a little bit better, but I think the advantage of CPA, right? I'm sorry, and I realize I'm on camera, but we're taking the control away from the selectmen alone,
Which I think
right?
is great.
So I think some people are gonna find this to be favorable.
I agree.
I genuinely do.
As long as they place the warrant article.
But what we're doing is that we're making it easier for the select board to be able to say, hey, that 16 acres that we should have bought, we didn't buy because we didn't have money set aside, or for the lack of better terms, like my mother used to do 100 years ago, have an envelope with money in it, right? To go buy groceries and do these other things, right? So if we had that envelope with money sitting in it to help that project, right? Or even do an APR, we haven't talked about that, but this community, years ago, we've done APRs, right? We can take money out of this CPA money to physically buy APR, put the town of Rutland's contribution in to help save more property, but not all the money, right? We could do that. We could work with that 16-acre parcel to do that. That gives us a greater opportunity for this, to have that envelope to say, hey, because the select people didn't have an envelope. They had one big envelope, right? Like the majority of the world does nowadays, and says, well, we don't have that money to take out of there for that 16 acres, but you know what? We got some money over in this envelope that we have, that we can use for this particular thing, right? Now, yes, we agree that potentially they had some Rutland Heights money that they could use if they wanted to, but yet that really wasn't a definitive envelope. The CPA gives a definitive envelope to have the ability to do it. So please consider supporting this. Drink milk, save open space for that reason alone.
I'd love to say yes, but I'm concerned that they're going to see that as the envelope there. Oh, we can use this to do this project, and we can use this to do this project. We can do, we don't want to save open space.
But
We want this, that's not the right open space, but we want this, and we want this, and, oh, you want a walking trail? Oh, no, you don't need a walking trail. We need this, and we need this,
But
and that's
Ka-
what concerns me.
But Karen,
But if they don't place that warrant article, the people don't have a chance to say anything.
Citizens petition.
So who places the warrant?
Board of Selectmen.
so,
Are they the only ones? Does CPA, do they place the warrant?
so the CPA committee
Yeah.
has to be presented to a table full of people like this, right? Hey, we want to save the 16 acres, we want to do the walking trail, whatever, right?
Right.
Probably similar to the capital improvement committee.
Right.
They'll evaluate it, they'll have a score sheet, yes, no, but they only can spend so much money in each direction, because 10% of those 3 categories that we spoke about.
Right.
And then you can take some of the additional money over to do on top of that 10%, that 65%, right? So accounting will have all those set aside, but in turn, the CPA committee controls it. Yes, the select board have to post it on the thing. I'm not certain if the selectmen choose not to follow the recommendation of the CPA committee, can there be a citizen's petition to place it on the warrant?
So I don't have a definitive answer right now, I can look into it, but my understanding is it would go through, the, CPC committee, the CPA committee, Community Preservation Act committee in town, that they would essentially be ranked, recommended, the funding source would be recommended from one of those buckets, or the fund as a whole, and then it gets placed for the legislative body, town meeting, to act on it. So I think in the past, if things come from boards and commissions, like town-sponsored boards and commissions, they get placed. It hasn't.
The one last fall didn't get placed for that 16 acres.
So that's the concern.
That's the concern.
That's,
That's
Because,
all they asked for is, all those people in that room, all they asked for is, put it on the warrant, have a meeting, and have the town vote on it.
I think the concern is that with CPC or the CPA committee, the funding is already there. The buckets of money are already there. The board felt that at the time that there was not funding available for that 16 acres. That was whereas if this CPA had been in place and it goes through the committee, the vetting committee and the CPA committee, and is ranked and determined to be a valuable asset to town, then it gets placed.
So, I will interpret this for you. Can the selectmen say no? The answer is yes, right? The likelihood of what I'm reading between the lines from the chairman of the select board is it's not likely not to be placed because she feels there's money available to do it. I think, from which I will get confirmed, I will think that if they don't place it for some reason, similar to the 16 acres that we're speaking about, right? I believe we can place it. You know, the CPA committee can get it placed somehow, whether it's a town warrant or other.
Get colored rocks at intersections placed on the warrant. I think we can get this placed on the warrant.
so that would be my concern, is that as much as there's a inclination to think that people would want to be able to have something, that there's also the risk that, select board are human beings too. And they are around town and they're listening to people talk about 2.5 hour ride and who's gonna solve the problems for us, and it didn't. It did fall short. And I'm concerned that, I think that if we're going to be asking the town people, the property owners, to be able to fund this, that we want to be able to give, just like the town is funding the government by asking for the taxes to be spent. Once that happens, I think that there should be one entity that should be responsible to be able to say, this is something that we feel is the right thing to be able to do, and we're going to place it on the warrant. It will get to the warrant, that there's no possibility that there's something out there that says no. And then let the town people decide. At that point, let them decide. If they decide the colored rocks are not the good thing to do, so we won't do it.
So I'm not certain, I understand you, and I think that's some favorable of the CPA going forward, is because we're taking the selectmen out of having total control, right? And in turn, we have the committee, and then we have the townspeople to do it. We'd have to ask questions to the state CPA, because the state controls how the CPA happens, right? Is there a way around the selectmen if they don't choose to do it, is a question that we have to physically ask.
All right.
So I can get back to you that on a definitive answer, but
But so now, you guys, have you put this on for the warrant articles to be placed for this annual town meeting?
yes, ma'am.
Okay. And do we know what percentage you're putting forward?
We have an idea of what we want to do, yes, ma'am.
You want to share the idea?
So if I have to place the warrant today,
Yes.
which I don't, we have a placeholder on there, and as it gets closer to it, we will declare that, or in the informational packet for the warrant to be placed, so it will be printed and everybody will be able to do it. So,
So no, you're not going to tell us.
I will.
Okay?
So, I'll tell you my opinion, right? And the majority of the Ag Commission is with me, right? We haven't had a vote as an Ag Commission to do this yet, but I'll just tell you the direction we're gonna go in. I'd like to suggest that we do 3%. And the reason I wanna do 3% is the matching fund from the state, for lack of better terms.
Makes a lot of sense.
I'd like to do $100,000 exemption, right, to help keep it more affordable for the households, right? As I said, I'm looking for the 3%. I don't need the full dollar coming from the townspeople. I'm trying to benefit from the state people coming this direction as well. I'd like to keep the residential and commercial, everybody on a level playing field.
Right.
So there's no differentiation in my eyes to anybody, right? We're all the same to do that. We're gonna put in low income. We're gonna put for seniors, we're gonna put low to moderate income in there as well for exempt, that they can be exempt, right? We're trying to help out the less fortunate or less income to
Fixed
physical,
income, yeah.
fixed income, right? We're gonna try to do that there. I don't believe that's the big picture of things that we gotta declare of what we're going forward. 3%, 100,000, everybody's the same.
So is there a risk in applying the CPA to business, to commercial, in that we're not very successful in bringing commercial commerce into town? Is it risky to be able to say, yeah, you're gonna be paying the same amount as a resident, but they maybe don't get the same benefit out of it? I don't know.
Yeah, so I think, and you kind of mentioned this, sort of, but a commercial, so like technically a farm would be considered commercial, right? Technically speaking.
In my opinion, you're wrong.
But technically speaking, is it considered commercial property?
I've been led to believe by people in this town that the farm is considered commercial.
By the town?
Randy
That's what
Jordan's
I'm-
tax bill at Jordan Dairy Farms is in a residential area.
So, to that point, maybe some farms are commercial, some are residential, I don't know, but then you would be excluding, some farms possibly, or something of that nature that maybe is benefiting from it, so I can see some mixed
It says in here,
results
if we
with
don't
that.
split the tax rate, which we don't, we haven't done that.
Right.
The same tax rate, then they're included. So,
Unless they're excluded.
no, it says if you don't split the tax rate, that would say the commercial property would stay
Unless you
taxed the same way.
provide that as an exemption with very few communities.
So once if we put this through, a bylaw has to be enacted?
Yes, a bylaw, and we have wonderful people that have the ability to help with bylaws that just may have come into the room and has started the process to
He's
do this.
retired.
And in turn, we're concerned that it may take time to get the bylaw, that's a valid point that brought up, right? But we don't receive money for a full year, and then, we're okay to get, it could take up to a year to get the bylaw in place and voted and approved by that, yes. That has the ability to take additional time, it doesn't have to be in place when this is voted yes or no. The other thing that I didn't say earlier that, just to clarify, the process that we're physically doing, what we chose to do, there are different ways to get this passed in communities. Westminster did it with a citizen's petition, and only did it as a citizen's petition. And they took 2 years, they chose to do it for 2 years to try to educate people, that I think personally down deep, that a lot of question came up at the latter part of it more than the beginning part of it, right? So we may not have quite enough time to get all the answers that we need, but we're gonna do a darn good job by May 11th, right? And we can educate the people the best we can in this first 6 months of hard pushing, then the last 6 months is my philosophy. So we, the Ag Commission, thinks it's to place it on the ballot, excuse me,
Place it on the town warrant.
put it on the town warrant, which is May 11th, and we feel it should be done at an annual town meeting, not necessarily a special town meeting, for some of bigger decisions that could affect us for a lifetime. And then it has to sit for at least 60 days before it can go on to a ballot. There was some question. Our initial reaction was we were gonna put it on the November ballot, but there is some question that it may not be able to go on a November ballot, but it may be able to go on the primary ballot. That's still, I haven't heard a definitive answer of that coming from Anita on the ballot. So September or November, it will appear on the ballot to do that. So, again, I may not be 100% on this. The town meeting will more or less, we need a favorable vote at both, but the town meeting more or less will place it onto the ballot to do it. But we'll generally talk about the 3%, the 100,000 exemption. Everybody's the same. I believe the verbiage will be in there. I could be wrong on that, but that verbiage will be in there, and we'll be able to educate people there. Things that the town,
No, there's nothing wrong with that. I just wanted to clarify something about the commercial property discussion that I heard. Commercial property is impacted by Community Preservation Act. However, there is the possibility of a $100,000 deduction in the value in the same way that it's on residential. So, commercial and industrial properties will be impacted by CPA because that's the law, but I think what Randy's saying is by making it the same all the way across, the deduction, the $100,000 deduction applies to all of those properties. It does
And I
not apply
guess-
to vacant land and other.
And I guess my only point was that if our intention over time is to attract more commerce, so let's be honest about it, so we can tax them more and get more money from that, bigger properties, bigger money, higher values, et cetera. Would any kind of additional charges create a hesitation
Yes, absolutely.
to somebody coming into town?
Of course it would.
Worcester passed it. Worcester's got the.
But it's the
CPA.
same thing that was said when we enacted the additional local meals tax. Oh, no one's gonna come out to eat in town anymore, no one's gonna go to Dunkin'
That's
Donuts
totally
anymore.
different.
But that's exactly what we heard when we put that in. I'm not gonna go there, and I can tell you, I drive by that place at 6 o'clock in the morning and there's a line. So, again, I think the 3%, $147, so, I mean,
No, you're right.
I don't think it's gonna be anything that, if a business
Peter-
wants to come
Peter?
into Rutland, I don't think,
That's gonna stop.
I think in regards to the average commerce that you see in the town of Rutland is not gonna be affected by the extra CPA, money being charged to them. I think it would be more effective for the larger businesses
Okay,
of the Amazons,
right,
right?
right.
And to coming into the town. The last time I looked, Amazon isn't beating on Rutland's door because of the infrastructure and the road system that we have coming in here. So the businesses that we currently have here aren't gonna leave because of it.
Right.
And if someone's gonna move from Holden to Rutland, they're not gonna say, or choose between Holden and Rutland to live, to have a small business, they're not probably gonna say no because of that, is my initial reaction.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with that. I am just concerned that the Amazon out there, or the D'Ambrosia Eye Medical Group in Lancaster decides to move here, or move in from Athol into here, that they may decide not to come here because they've got this additional cost. Small. It is small, and I understand that. So I'm gonna just leave that where it is at this point.
It's small, but it becomes not small if they build a $20 million building.
And you're right, it's a big number then, because 3% of 20 million is,
if you can afford a $20 million building, you're gonna get a pilot in here anyway, and we're gonna give them deals anyway. If we can get somebody and we're gonna give them a deal, and they're not gonna have to pay for 5, 10 years, and then we'll worry about it.
But, correct me if I'm wrong, this $20 million building that's built here, right? Their taxes are X. It's gonna be charged the extra 3% hopefully.
Right.
On there as well, right?
Right.
They're gonna pay an extra
100,000.
3%, but yet they're gonna pay for that fire truck that we can't afford to buy, and we gotta have an override for the fire truck as well, right?
Right.
So if the CPA goes in, and we have some additional money available to help with, or frees up all the money to buy that fire truck, because I don't think we can buy a fire truck with CPA money, I don't believe, right?
Okay.
But what I'm saying is, just like my household taxes, I expect are going to go down, right? My evaluation changes every year, the tax rate changes every year, but yet my Randy Jordan's taxes going into the town of Rutland is likely to go down if CPA passes at 3%, right? Because, and I have multiple people that have spoken to me that they have put CPA in their community, and their taxes, out-of-pocket taxes, have physically gone down.
okay.
After how many years?
the first few, Karen.
Asking.
That's not reasonable to expect in Rutland, considering our tax base and what it has to be used for.
Right.
That's not gonna happen.
I wouldn't put any sort of emphasis on that. I mean, you could say that it has happened in other communities, but
Like I said,
And it's a
I'm very careful with the language that I've used.
yeah, but you're not.
But the suggestion is that it would happen here.
Emphasizing it.
So, I'm sorry.
I just want to clarify one thing because I don't think you've stated it, and I think I understand it, but what's the 3% of?
Your valuation.
3% of your tax bill.
3% of the tax
Yes.
bill
So-
or the tax value of
It
the
can't be the
house?
tax value, because that's
It's the
like,
tax bill.
Yeah.
So they
Tax
take,
bill.
they take the value of the property, they multiply it by our rate per thousand, divide it by 1,000,
Yeah,
that's your
it's the
tax
tax
bill,
bill.
and
3%
you add
tax bill.
3% to that.
okay, 3% tax bill.
Okay.
Okay, just wanted to clarify. Because
So-
you kept saying 3%, and then you were like 3% of 327, and I was like, wait a second, that's like 10 grand.
So, from the perspective of the exception, when we, and I'm gonna play just devil's advocate here for a second. $100,000 exemption, which would reduce the value of the property, right? If I'm understanding it correctly.
It decreases the value that they use as the input to the 3%.
Oh,
So the tax rate doesn't change.
So if your
The
tax
court
bill-
tax rate, but instead of being a $350,000, a surcharge on 350, it's a surcharge on 250.
So if your tax bill is $10,000 on a 427,000 house, 27, you're basically cutting a quarter off of that, so you're getting the 3% on 7,500 instead of 10,000.
Okay, all right, and I understand that.
75%.
I'll accept that as just as a practical philosophy. But from the perspective of the exemption itself, the $100,000, and I understand that there's people out in town that will need that kind of relief whenever there's something like this that comes along. But quite frankly, there are some people in town that don't need that. I mean, it's nice to be fair, but I hear all the time, everybody should be paying their fair share. And if you're at $1 million piece of property in town here, do you really need that $100,000? Do we really need to be able to provide that $100,000? Maybe we do. Maybe equitably across the board, it's important to be able to say that we're being fair. But as much as we're trying to help out, as we saw in this room last year, people saying, you know, it is only $10 a month for, and it's like a cup of coffee, and so everybody can really afford to do that. But there are people in here that they were talking about being put out of their homes. Those folks need to be able to get help. The guy that's got, the guy and the gal that have this gigantic house that they've just built, 2 jobs, do they, I know I'm probably not being politically correct, but do they need that exemption?
But we can't segregate. That's the problem.
You can't what?
We can't separate, you know, from the rich and poor, we can't separate from it.
It's all or none for
It's all or
the
nothing.
exemption.
And I
As a
would,
matter, I'm sorry, just as a matter of, when you say it's all or none, it's a
Everybody gets the exemption or nobody does, because that's the
And
law.
that's a CPA?
Yes.
Okay. I'll shut up.
I also think though, no, I mean, you're not wrong, and theoretically, we could take that out and then do a bigger exemption on make sure we're giving the exemption on the people who.
I like
the
that.
lower income and all that stuff, so I mean,
Yeah.
theoretically, you could do that. But, I mean, the 100,000, it's basically just saying, you know, we don't wanna hit as heavy as we could. And I
That's
don't
fine.
think that's a bad thing, and I don't think, it's not a percentage, so you're hitting it's equitable across. It's not like the $1 million person is benefiting any different because they have a bigger house. They're still having the 100,000, the $200,000 house is still having 100,000. So it's an equitable benefit. It's not like, you know, the property tax exemption where it's not equitable, and that's clearly,
Some of our initial reaction that we had as a community, you know, Ag Commission talking is, hey, if we could, this is before we knew everything we know today, is we're gonna put the exemption at $500,000. right? So, but then the concern was, this is a millionaire's tax, not a, bottom feeder. So we had that discussion, but I think the state had thought about it a little bit differently than we did. We're trying to help out the people that are more in need with those. We don't have to put in the low income in the senior home exemptions, but we are. We're giving them that option if they choose to.
You know what that sort of thing does, though? It just makes anybody who builds a house in town makes a $499,999 house.
If you put a 500,000 in?
So like, by doing something like that, you're basically stipulating the value of the house that people are gonna build going. It doesn't have that much of an
Yeah,
impact, but.
for that kind of money, they're gonna go with the $800,000 house.
I don't know.
Nobody's gonna stop
Depends on
that.
the difference. It's just, that's the sort of thing you get from putting that into place, so I could understand some hesitation to do that, but 100,000 is, I mean,
Who's gonna calculate this?
Not me. It's on your tax bill.
I believe it's the assessor's office that does the calculation.
Okay.
If I may.
Sure.
The software, Vadar and everything has it built in that it can go in, so there will be some front-loaded work on the assessor side, on land
Setting
use
it up.
side, whatever. The fund, CPA fund allows for up to 5% every year of the fund to be allocated to administrative services, which could be for increased staff or increased hours or however. That also has to be appropriated. Those funds are appropriated every year at town meeting outside of.
yeah, there's no doubt that piece right there, the administrative piece would lower our overall tax bill technically. I mean, obviously, it's a very small percentage, right? But to your point, replacing or repairing things like the recreation where that normally would come out of the general fund and we could put that into the CPA, it would lower the overall taxable.
Recreation is a revolving fund and does not come out of the general fund.
Okay, but the playground behind there, fixing that does not come out of recreation, I don't think.
That might be a separate, it all depends, but that recreation is not part of the general fund. It's a revolving fund.
So some funds that would need to come from general fund
Right.
could potentially come from CPA, which would reduce the overall tax need. So I could see some benefit to, I don't know that it would, as Randy said, lower tax rate or tax bills for people, but it definitely has potential to do so.
So,
Well, last week we discussed at length that we have a revenue problem, and this is a potential way to generate revenue, and it's us kind of taking care of ourselves.
Right, but it won't help the general fund.
right.
Right, it won't actually, in my opinion, help, only because you can't use it for normal operating expenses, so this doesn't, right.
We still have that same problem, it's just gonna help us do some of the other things that
It'll
we
help them.
can't do.
Right.
Which are things like,
For you.
getting a new building or doing the things that we need to do
The
that we
senior
haven't
center.
done for
Yeah,
so many years.
but to that point too, when and if the town goes to buy a plot of land for open use, right, that would have to be probably leveraged debt, which would increase tax bills. But if you were to use the CPA money that's already been established, we wouldn't have to do that, and therefore the tax bill would stay the same. So there are ways, like, it's not gonna help our current situation, it might to a very small degree, but it will definitely help in future tax bills. There's no doubt about that.
Something that popped into my mind when you were talking about the exemption was that if you go with a 3%, which is the maximum, that is looked upon favorably by the state when we're applying for grants and matching money and things like that. Does having an exemption in place negate that, or do they look at that and say 3% is great, but they've got an exemption?
Best of my knowledge, whether you have an exemption or whether you have 0 or 100,000 doesn't change the way the state looks at you in regards to matching fund or grant opportunities.
It
Have we-
gets super complicated, unfortunately.
There's probably some amount on return where the 100,000 exemption gets you to 2.8% or something like that, so it's got to affect that overall amount.
I took a fast look at the matching funds distribution for 2023. And for those communities that had maxed out their, went for the 3%, the matching funds distribution varied wildly. Randy's right, some towns, Conrad, got 100%. Some towns, cities, got 21% at the end of the day for the total match. And the math behind it is difficult. I don't
It's like
understand.
chapter 70.
It's more than they would have gotten if they had only put in a 1 or a 2%. There's no question about that. It's just the certainty of matching funds is far from certain in my mind.
You said that it helps check the box of the grant. Are we 100% sure that that helps when going for a grant?
Yes.
So,
What I have been told by Austin, the answer is yes, it's never a negative event.
so to
Margaret
that,
even said that way back when she first tried to do this.
I would assume that would be because it shows that we're trying to help ourselves.
Well, I could see that as, oh, you guys have money from us that you've received already, so you don't need this additional grant. I can
And
see
that money comes in every year.
From the state?
Every year, the calculation is different.
Every year, the money comes in,
Yes, ma'am.
and we get that money,
Yes, ma'am.
and we do not have to worry about them coming in and taking it back.
Yes, ma'am.
It's collected through the
Huh?
registry of
Guaranteed.
deeds.
Huh?
It's collected through the registry of deeds.
I don't care, I wanna know what's coming in every year. I don't care how it's collected, I wanna know how it's coming in.
Alex, to your point, we've had conversations in the past with Senator Goby and Representative Ferguson, and asking if they could assist us on something. And they said, whether it's an earmark or whatever, and even things like that, they said, really, there's funds available, but we don't have CPA. And really, in a lot of instances, the state or whatever entity is looking for some sort of municipal commitment that you're serious about it, and not just, like, so.
Yeah, so that's clearly a big selling point then. I think we need to emphasize that more to the town,
well,
just when we're talking about this.
so,
Sure.
I mean, just a thought, it's just a thought, but if Rutland can favorably apply, more favorably be considered for a grant because they're affecting the CPA, would it be reasonable to think that, I don't know, Wachusett Regional School System could claim the same favorability if all of the towns were part of the CBA? Is that something that is practically applicable?
I can't answer that.
My gut reaction would be no, because those buckets are like the historical, I think it would depend on what they're looking to do. Maybe if it's an open space recreation project, they might be able to leverage something there, but that would be community specific, so.
So you wouldn't expect that the DPW could apply for a grant and be,
It depends what the grant is for.
so if
Like-
the school system were, I mean, again, we're looking at taxes going up and down, and is it gonna go down for Rutland? And so Austin said it, tell me what the school is gonna be next year, and I'll tell you whether or not we're gonna see an increase in taxes, or the 2.5 is gonna fund it. If the collection of the region were able to put forward a educational grant, if that's what they would do, and they could be more favorably reviewed in that request for a grant by the collection of towns is in fact part of CPA individually, then I see that as being a good thing to be able to do.
We have no control over that.
No, we don't, other than the fact that we're in the region.
But we can't determine what the other towns do.
No, but we can have
But if the school system is going for the grant, then the school system is not a CPA participant, period. Doesn't matter, even if all 5 towns were, the school system itself as a separate body is not a CPA participant.
right, and I understand, well, it's not
Nope,
it's not
It's
a
a
CPA person,
nope.
not at all.
Yeah, we're going.
I think
Two
where you
separate
could,
things.
where you could benefit from the schools, correct me if I'm wrong, the town does any large expenses to the schools.
Right.
Now, if we had a school that was historical, if we wanted some open space at a school, if we wanted a playground at a school, capital expenses that each town would have themselves to be part of the school, which isn't typically part of the school budget, right?
Right, so-
So you could have Naquag,
Yeah,
we may be able to put a new playground over there, or increase the sporting fields over there, or something like that.
okay.
The kids inside is more challenging to do from what knowledge I have.
Okay.
Is that fair to assume?
That's right.
So, lastly, one last question. Accountability, funds generated come in and then they go out. How would the town folk know how what's coming in and what's being collected and what's being spent?
So on the CPA state website, you can go right on there and see what Templeton received
Okay,
each year. And they have a list of what they actually physically spent that I have copies in here of, so I knew how money was spent.
okay.
So it's public knowledge, not just to the townspeople, but to the state people that could physically look at seeing that.
Excellent. Thank you.
If I may, the bylaw that I've seen, that I
I've seen a
wrote,
few.
You wrote?
specifically says that the CPC will report its doings, which includes all the monies, in the town annual report.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
As part of the bylaw, are they allowed to put that the CPC has to do a citizen's petition and make sure that that warrant article gets onto the town meeting warrant every year?
That is not part of a bylaw,
Is
and
it,
it would not
is it,
be.
it is not, it cannot be?
I would not put that in because that's duplicative of other sections of Mass General Law.
Okay.
So if I can go back to that topic, yes, the committee can cause a citizen petition by doing the work as any other citizen petition to put any warrant article on any town meeting, period. Every citizen in town has that ability.
Okay.
But by the time they vote it down, it's too late to put a citizen's petition on,
It could be.
usually.
There's always another town meeting, but
Right, I get it, I'm trying to prevent what happened with the 16 acres from happening again, because the fact is, whether we like it or not, the Board of Selectmen still have that right. And they were asked specifically that evening to put it on and let the townsfolk vote for it, and they all went, nope. That was
and
it.
that will always be a possibility, and that's not just, and I don't
Right.
mean anything about the current select board. How many different iterations of the select
Oh,
board
yeah.
have we seen in the last 5 years? And they've had very different makeups.
Sure.
And I
And
understand
philosophies.
that. And that's why I think that it's a big chunk of change, that you want to make sure that people get to use it the way they want, and that it gets placed so that they can make that choice, not,
The select
But it
board
gets
is
taken out.
is a voted-in group, so if they didn't do what the town wanted,
They get
they're
voted out.
simply gonna get voted out. I mean, that's, if the overwhelming majority of the town wanted that and they didn't put it in, then they're just not gonna exist in the.
Yeah, but how do they know that they wanted it, the overwhelming majority, if they don't get a chance to vote on it?
Put it on a website.
Because they voted for the select person
I'm-
who's
I'm-
there.
I'm on the state website, and it shows the municipality, the year adopted, the percent adopted, it shows everything.
Okay. So accountability, we got it.
oh yeah, the
It's there.
state's going to make sure that you do all
Yeah.
that.
Well, it'd be an enterprise account of some sort, or whatever, revolving, however, it's separate dollars from the general fund, so.
Actually, Tamika's up.
Oh, yeah.
Randy, has there been any rough calculation yet as to how much we could potentially collect on an annual basis from the residents?
Very rough, but yes, we're in that 472 number.
Okay.
That's with the 100,000 exemption and some accountability of low income and senior income as a whole, and that would be the town's contribution. Now, I'm not guaranteeing that number because it could be
Right.
It changes.
more or less. That's an average of the low income and other things going in there.
Okay.
So we're assuming that the state would match that, and we're gonna go with a positive $100,000 thing, but that's a variation.
Okay.
So we could be heading toward $1 million of annual income to be heading in that right direction, but not guaranteed.
Thank you.
I actually have a question about, and it's almost an accounting question. So there are earmarks for the fund, the 5% for housing and for affordable, whatever the percentages are.
10% for open space, 10% for historical, 10% for affordable housing, 5% for
For
Administration
for
costs.
administrative, okay. Is that done on the input or on the output? And by that I mean, if we have the 10% earmarked, as it were, for affordable housing. If we don't spend that money in year one, when it comes in, what happens the next year to that money?
great
How do we
question.
account for all the different earmarks?
So there's a whole section on the CPC about the accounting piece and strategically how you use the funds within CPA, and when you're trying to fund a project. And it's better, whether it's better to use some of the 10% of your, say there's an affordable housing project, or there's a project that could come out of affordable housing, that you use that 10% first, and then if you need additional, you go to that remaining 65% bucket.
Oh, no, I understand that, but my
And
question
maybe a
is,
question also.
if we don't spend the money on affordable housing, what happens to that 10%? If it's done on input, but does it stay earmarked forever?
Does it carry over?
How does it carry over to the following year?
Again, I don't know the answer for sure. I would assume that 10% of your affordable housing that comes in this year stays, it just continuously grows. There's interest that is applied to that would stay part of CPA, is what Austin led me to believe the other day. We may not know that definitively.
Oh, that's what the law says, that interest accrued on the account goes into the account.
Into the account, right? So that may be a variation, but that interest may go part of the 65%. But if you have, for the lack of better terms, $100,000 for affordable housing this year that came in from the state and the townspeople in the town of Rutland, that would be 100,000 added on to next year's money as well. to do it.
It's probably set up as 4 different accounts in the accounting world. It's probably one for each of the buckets and then one for the general CPA. That's most likely how you would set it up, because then you would have that as a revolving fund, and each year you'd allocate the money into the 3 buckets and then the remaining of the 4.
Just the accountability is easier.
Yeah, that's how you would most likely set it up in an accounting sense.
Legitimate question, but I think that's something that can be learned and educated as we go forward.
Yep.
Could be part of the bylaw.
Who's going to invest this? That would be the treasurer, right?
Treasurer, yes.
Okay, so right now we have an interim treasurer. And as last time I heard anything, we don't have any strong candidates for a full-time position. So this interim person, I just want to make sure that we have the staff to handle this. Because,
We get 5% of the money, we can get more staff.
okay.
So is that an Austin question?
Probably.
All investments of otherwise idle town funds is managed by the treasurer
Yep.
by law.
Yeah, I know.
So,
That's why I asked the
Yeah.
question, because I'm like, we have an interim.
Right.
And,
But we have an assistant treasurer, correct? And we have somebody that works for the town on managing money that works with the treasurer like an outside firm, correct? So I think we gotta put a little bit of faith in the treasurer and the town administrator to guide that ship in the proper direction, and the outside help to physically do it. Positive, half full here, please,
If that becomes an issue, I'll volunteer my time and come help.
There you go.
for the 5%.
Whatever.
a
We'll go
nominal
for 3.
fee.
I can't imagine that's gonna, no, I said volunteer.
Oh,
We can take that off your 3%.
Peter, to answer, if I may, to answer your question, my understanding, and we can clarify, but is that it's 10% gets allocated to those 3 buckets every year, so it's 10% of revenue every year that's allocated. You can spend to those buckets, you can spend from those buckets, so it's not that it
Right.
needs to maintain 10% of the total fund, but it's 10% of your yearly accumulation needs to be put in those buckets.
Okay. Anybody else have any other questions or comments for
So,
the Ag Committee?
we're having a meeting on April 11th. Will we have the full write-up before the 11th as to what you guys want to put forward?
Could be close. April 11th, we are not likely to have all of our public, we're hoping to have 2 or 3 informational meetings similar to we've had in the past to help things along.
But you will have the
Article.
the article written for us to either
Say yes or no.
say yes or no, that we would be in, what recommend it?
Recommend favorably or
Yeah.
unfavorably.
Yes.
It'll be on the warrant so that we can recommend action.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. That's the important thing.
We'd also like probably a letter of support of some sort of a motion. I don't know if it just quantifies it a little bit more above and beyond your recommendation on the board that we can use for some leverage on talking points at the town meeting, that we can say, hey, FinCon voted.
How long are you planning on talking at the town meeting? It's a long meeting as it is.
He's not gonna
He's
be
not
there,
gonna
so he
talk
doesn't
at all,
care.
right?
I know that, but he knows exactly where I'm going at. How long are you planning on talking at this town meeting? We don't want like a Weston and
he's not
Sampson
talking at all.
long, presentation. Remember that year when we had the two Weston and Sampsons? No.
No.
Those of us sitting in those very uncomfortable chairs, we want to get out.
You bring cushy chairs with us.
You ask us every year, how long do we think we're gonna stay?
Have I ever let you down?
You're not gonna be there. So I'm asking, how long does the Agricultural Commission expect that this presentation's gonna take at the town meeting?
Be 5 minutes or less.
Okay.
We're hoping to deal with most of the questions beforehand, right? We have the ability on the town floor to change things if we need to. If the majority of the people say, hey, 1% instead of 3%, we can put an amendment on the floor to deal with that, right? So that would be the variation. I am genuine hoping to air all concerns beforehand and know exactly how the ducks are gonna swim before they swim.
Okay.
We may not even need to do a presentation, right? But our intended plan is to have something printed so people can understand it, maybe an example to do it, but we're hoping to have a lot of that on the website because the select board has allowed the Ag Commission to help with the help of Tamika to get some things on the website to try to keep people informed as much as they can. Obviously, like Lynn has learned, that the website is very helpful if people want to dive in a little bit more than the average people. We're hoping to put some on our general page to get people a one-click or a two-click away from learning the overall picture of things. And if they want to get into the weeds of things and learn a little bit more, they can go to this website and there'll be a link to it to help form it in. I'm genuine hoping there's not a ton of questions at the annual town meeting to physically be able to handle it. We're going to give a little bit of words of encouragement to get there or list off all the support that we have of other committees other than the selectmen or the finance. Or, if for some reason you don't vote favorably, we can justify why, if we can spin it to be half full, that we can possibly spin it to half full. But we'd like to list off the positive of it. I don't think we want to get too deep of what we could do with it, but we may give some examples of other communities that, hey, Hubbardston's done this, Templeton's done this, West Boylston's done this, so people can relate to different things that could bring us to do this. We'd like to talk about the potential of good things that we can go with to go forward this and have a positive. We have to answer negative things about it, we're willing to do it, but we're gonna try to focus on the positive of where it's gonna help the town. And I'm hoping to go in with the attitude of, geez, why didn't we do this before? Is what I'm genuine hoping to do. The opportunities that we have missed, we'd like to catch up and do it now. There has been some people say, why are we doing it now? We just had the 2.5 override last year, we shouldn't do it. The time isn't right to do it.
It never
I
is.
don't, exactly, I don't think.
never is.
It's never opportunity, so we're gonna give our best college try right now and to get it passed, and we're gonna try to make the decisions of where the numbers are, but the numbers, I told you where we're leaning toward doing. If we have some pushback, which we've had very, very little pushback about any of the numbers that I've said about the exemptions or the 3% to do it. Everyone, far greater than I anticipated, understand that we'd like to get that closer to the 100% match from the town, right? Again, like Peter has said, it's not a guarantee, right? But yet, it's gonna give us a
Something.
better chance to physically do it if we don't, right? And if we can keep it within range of affordable in people's eyes outside our home, we've got a better chance to do this together.
My recommendation would be is that you get a calculator on your website
Yeah, we're
page,
working on it.
so that they can actually see what it is, because people aren't gonna go up and say, well, mine's this, what is this? They wanna go on and see what the hit is. because everyone's home and it varies greatly.
I would use, the playground behind the pool as an example of something that could be updated, because that is sorely in need of update. And we do not have the money in the general fund to do that, so that's something that would be potentially.
That's a hot button.
It's a great example of something that could be,
For the town fields, that's always a hot button.
yeah. Good examples. Just,
Tom Galvin has said the other day about, he'd like to have a study for recreational fields and other things to do it here. One of the communities that I spoke about, or the 4 communities, have done studies about rec fields. That's a prime example that's in there that we can easily do. I can show you other communities of things that we need, right? That I think, like you say, drive it home a little bit. I mean, I think you guys have had great questions to give us some things to think about, as a whole, but, you know, as we continue to learn this together, it's still in the favorable eyes of a lot of people who are doing this thing now.
Well, that's why they pay us the big bucks here anyway.
I'm right there with you.
anything else?
It's good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I wanted to go on note. Mr. Ross has asked me to come to this meeting. I'm a little disappointed Mr. Ross is not here. I hope he enjoys watching this at home. And hopefully if he has any questions, he can reach out to me and speak to me on this, please.
Who's on the network? Has he texted us,
Yeah,
tweeted
he
us?
did.
We got an email.
He texted and emailed.
We got an email that he
I
was
mean,
in.
while he's,
Now he had
No,
something else to do.
beforehand.
Something out of his control. Which is usually a pretty serious thing,
Yeah.
so I don't wanna make light of it. So I don't know what it is, I have no idea. We don't have any other business, so if anyone wants to.
I have one other small piece of business.
Oh,
Yep.
okay.
Yep.
This piece of paper, does anyone feel like I do that this, if it were broken out of the larger document and put on our website, would be a lot easier to find and helpful to people that want to know about the budget?
Yep.
Tamika?
I talked to Austin about it today, he said it's there.
But is it standalone, or is it part of the budget document?
No, it's standalone, he said.
Can you show us where?
I don't specifically know where, it's underneath the finance tab.
I couldn't find it.
Because that's the thing, you have to click a lot of places. It should be, to me, it should be on the front page, you can click on it, so it's right there. So that you gotta click more than 2, forget it. People are gonna say, forget it, can't get it.
I'm sorry, sometimes people have to click more than twice to get to stuff, it just is what it is, but it'll say that everything for the finances are under the financial page on the website, which is linked on the town meeting page, which is right on the home page, the town meeting page. It's under residents at the top. It's also under news and announcements.
And then you gotta go to town meeting.
Is there a way to, is there a way to put a link on the front page for,
Not specifically, not without it being under a subpage, but it's on the news and announcements on the very first homepage as well. It's a featured news and announcement.
I don't think people are gonna click this far in, to be quite honest.
I don't think it's there as a standalone. I asked in one meeting to actually show us on the computer, and we never,
What's the name on the top of that,
we
Tim?
never got it. It says Town of Rutland Financial Plan, Multi-Year Financial Planning Document.
Oh,
It's its own tab underneath, it says town budget, school budget. It says multi-year financial forecast.
it's a lot of clicks.
Will I find it?
Yeah, it's
Yeah, it's
there,
on
it's there, but you're clicking to get in, down into it,
What's it in there as, PDF?
yeah.
So I gotta click on, I get to this.
You go to residents, yep, and then you go to the, so there you go, so,
Maybe, what did I do? I go to town budgets.
yep. And then you go to multi-year financial plan.
Multi-year financial, just don't see it. Multi-year financial forecast, okay, there it is down there.
You're not really gonna be able to see it down there.
I can't see it on a piece of paper.
You see it on that?
Multi-year financial.
I mean, it's there, you can blow it up, but.
Are you
But it's not
proposing-
updated, we gotta update it too, but,
Are you proposing something, Ted?
I am, I gotta, I mean, does it have to come like in the form of a motion,
I was just asking if there was a request or a, it's on the website, it's hard to find, I get it. I actually don't see it on the finance page, which I can tell you.
It is, they just proved it to me, but, or they just helped me prove it to myself. I just think, yeah, phones are horrible too.
Oh, it's on their financial, not finance committee.
Right, yeah, so it's under, if you just click on the town meeting, it links you right to the financial stuff.
So it's under admin, it's not on the finance committee one, so maybe it should be there as well, would be my thought.
We maybe should have a tab in the finance committee, a hyperlink in the finance committee tab of some sort that links to.
Do that.
Yeah, that seems like a,
Just a little
That's a
easier.
wicked good idea.
Wicked.
Wicked good.
I don't think there needs to be a motion, but if it's not done, we can make it a motion. Then, sure.
I'll take care of it on Monday.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tamika.
Anything else, folks?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Any last minute discussion? All those in favor to adjourn?
Aye.
Aye.
7:30.